Hello, my good friends. How are you today? May God bless you all. I will not introduce anything. You guys watch the video and feel it. Then let's evaluate together. The Detroit Community Health Fair was alive with the pulse of the city. Booths lined the grassy lot in Brightmoor, their tables piled high with fried chicken, peach cobbler, and pitchers of sweet tea that glistened in the late afternoon sun. Kids darted between the stalls, their laughter mingling with the soulful hum of a gospel choir singing "Oh, Happy Day" from a makeshift stage. The air smelled of barbecue and hope, a mix of smoky meat and the promise of better days. At the center of it all stood Nia Coleman, her navy blue dress hugging her curves, her natural curls framing her face like a crown. She was speaking at a podium, her voice steady and warm, outlining her dream to open a free clinic for the neighborhood she'd called home as a child. The crowd, families, local leaders, volunteers, hung on her every word, their applause rising like a wave when she finished. Nia stepped back, her heart full but heavy. This was her moment, the culmination of years of grinding through med school, late-night shifts at Chicago's Mercy Hospital, and a vision rooted in her parents' lessons about giving back. But as she scanned the crowd, her eyes caught on a figure near the edge of the lot, and her breath hitched. Ethan Caldwell, the man who'd stolen her heart, broken it, and now stood here, in her city, on her turf, looking like he hadn't slept in weeks. He wore a simple white shirt, sleeves rolled up, his dark hair slightly messy, but those piercing blue eyes locked on her with an intensity that made her stomach flip. She hadn't seen him since their tense meeting at a Chicago coffee shop 3 weeks ago, when he'd begged for a chance to explain the lies he'd told her. Ethan Caldwell, the billionaire CEO of Novatech, had posed as Ethan, a regular tech guy, for 3 months of their whirlwind romance. He'd kissed her under streetlights, held her after grueling hospital shifts, and let her believe he was just a man who loved her laugh and her dreams. Until a chance encounter at a jazz club had blown his cover, leaving her humiliated and betrayed. She'd agreed to hear him out, but only on her terms. No promises, no forgiveness. So why was he here, in Detroit, at her health fair? The choir's song faded, and the MC took the mic, ready to introduce the next speaker. But Ethan moved, striding toward the stage with a purpose that made Nia's pulse race. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Some recognized him from the headlines, the tech mogul whose empire had made him a household name. The MC hesitated, but Ethan waved him off, climbing the steps and taking the mic. The spotlight caught him, and the crowd fell silent, every eye on the man who didn't belong. "Nia," Ethan said, his voice rough but clear, carrying over the quiet. "I owe you an apology, not just to you, but to everyone here who believes in you." Nia's hands clenched at her sides, her heart pounding. She wanted to stop him, to drag him off stage and demand answers in private, but her feet wouldn't move. The crowd watched, some pulling out phones to record, and she felt exposed, raw, like her pain was on display for the world. "I met Nia Coleman 4 months ago," Ethan continued, his eyes never leaving hers. "I was hiding who I am, not because I wanted to hurt her, but because I was afraid. Afraid that if she knew I was Ethan Caldwell, the guy with billions and a company that's on every phone, she wouldn't see me. But I was wrong. I lied to her, and I broke her trust. I broke something real, something I didn't deserve in the first place." The crowd murmured, some nodding, others whispering. Nia's throat tightened, memories flooding back. The way Ethan's hands had felt on her waist, the heat of his kisses in a Chicago alley, the laughter they'd shared over soul food, and then the betrayal. The moment she'd seen his face on her phone, labeled America's most eligible billionaire, and realized the man she loved was a stranger. "I don't deserve your forgiveness," Ethan said, his voice cracking. "I know that, but I'm here to say that Nia's dream, this clinic, this community, is real. It's bigger than my mistakes. bigger than me. I believe in her, not because I want to fix what I broke, but because she's the strongest, most brilliant person I've ever met, and I'm asking for a chance to prove I can be the man she thought I was. The crowd erupted in applause, some cheering, others wiping tears. Nia stood frozen, her mind a storm of anger, hurt, and something softer, something she didn't want to name. Ethan stepped down, handing the mic back to the MC, and made his way toward her, stopping a few feet away. Up close, she could see the shadows under his eyes, the way his hands trembled slightly. He pulled a small envelope from his pocket and held it out, his voice low, meant only for her. "This isn't a bribe," he said. "It's a partnership offer. A building in Brightmoor in your name for your clinic. No strings, no Novatech branding, just a start if you want it." Nia's fingers brushed his as she took the envelope, the contact sending a jolt through her. She remembered the nights they'd spent tangled together, his breath warm against her neck, his whispers of love that had felt so real. Her body still knew him, still wanted him, but her heart was a fortress now, guarded by the pain he'd caused. She tucked the envelope into her purse, her voice steady despite the chaos inside her. "Words don't erase what you did, Ethan," she said, her eyes locked on his. "You think standing up there, bearing your soul, makes us even? It doesn't. I'll look at your offer, but don't expect me to open my heart again. Not yet." He nodded, relief and regret mixing in his expression. "I'll take whatever you give me, Nia. Just meet me at the Brew in Chicago. One more talk, please." She hesitated, then nodded once, her jaw tight. "One talk. That's all you get." As the crowd dispersed, drawn to the food stalls and music, Nia slipped away to a quiet corner, her mind racing. Jada, her best friend and a nurse at Mercy Hospital, found her, her braids swinging as she pulled Nia into a hug. "Girl, what was that?" Jada asked, her eyes wide. "That man just put his whole heart on the line in front of Detroit. You okay?" "I don't know," Nia admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "He hurt me, Jada, but seeing him up there, it's like I saw the Ethan I fell for, not the billionaire who lied." Jada squeezed her hand. "Take it slow, Nia. You don't owe him anything, but if you're going to hear him out, make him work for it." Nia nodded, her gaze drifting to Ethan, who was helping a volunteer stack chairs, his sleeves rolled up, his focus quiet but deliberate. He looked like the man she'd met all those months ago, in a Chicago coffee shop under a spring rain, when a single moment had changed everything. It was a Tuesday, the kind of day that felt like the universe was crying. Rain poured down on Wicker Park, turning the streets into rivers and sending Chicagoans scrambling for cover. Nia, fresh off a 12-hour shift at Mercy, had ducked into the Brew, a cozy coffee shop with mismatched chairs and shelves of dog-eared books. Her scrubs were damp under her raincoat, her curls frizzing under a knit cap. But she didn't care. She just needed a moment to breathe, to study for her board certification before her next shift. She ordered a chai latte and settled at a corner table, her medical journal open, a small reading light clipped to the pages. The power flickered, plunging the shop into semi-darkness, and a collective groan rose from the patrons. Nia laughed, unfazed, and turned on her reading light, offering it to the guy at the next table. "Need some light?" she asked, her voice warm. He looked up, and Nia's breath caught. He was tall, with broad shoulders and dark hair that fell into piercing blue eyes. His hoodie was soaked, his baseball cap dripping, but his smile was like sunlight breaking through the storm. "You're a lifesaver," he said, scooting his chair closer. "I'm Ethan, by the way." "Nia," she said, shaking his hand. His grip was warm, steady, and for reasons she couldn't explain, her pulse quickened. They started talking about the book he was reading, a dog-eared copy of Their Eyes Were Watching God, about her love for Solange's music, about the quirks of Chicago's neighborhoods. When the rain cleared, he walked her to her bus stop, their shoulders brushing under her umbrella. The streetlights cast a soft glow, and without thinking, Nia leaned up and kissed him, a quick, impulsive press of her lips to his. She pulled back, laughing, her cheeks warm. "Sorry, I don't know what got into me." "Don't apologize," he said, his voice low, his eyes dark with something that made her heart race. "I'm glad you did." He asked for her number, scribbling it on a coffee-stained napkin, and as she boarded her bus, Nia felt a spark she hadn't known she was missing. She didn't know then that Ethan was Ethan Caldwell, the billionaire behind Novatech, a man whose life was splashed across Forbes and CNN. She only knew he made her laugh, made her feel seen, and that was enough. Back in Detroit, Nia stood by her car, the envelope from Ethan heavy in her purse. The health fair was winding down, the gospel choir now singing Amazing Grace, the notes floating over the crowd like a prayer. She watched Ethan from a distance, his silhouette against the setting sun, and felt the weight of her choice. Meeting him at the brew meant stepping back into his world, risking her heart again. But saying no meant closing the door on a man who'd just bared his soul, who'd offered her a piece of her dream without asking for anything in return. She thought of her mama's words, spoken over Sunday dinners in Hyde Park. "Love ain't easy, baby, but it's worth fighting for when it's real." Was Ethan real? Or was he just a billionaire playing a part? Nia didn't know, but as she drove back to Chicago, the city lights blurring through her windshield, she knew she'd find out. One talk, one chance. That was all she'd give him, for now. If you've ever loved someone who broke your trust, or wondered if a second chance could rewrite a love story, this one's for you. Nia and Ethan's journey is just getting started, and it's going to be a roller coaster. Hit that subscribe button and drop a comment. Tell me about a time you faced a tough choice in love, or what you think Nia should do next. Let's dive into this together and see if true love can shine through the lies. The Brew was a haven in the heart of Chicago's Wicker Park, a coffee shop that felt like a warm hug on even the grayest days. Its walls were lined with shelves of tattered books, the tables a mix of scratched wood and wobbly metal, and the air carried the rich scent of roasted coffee beans and fresh-baked cinnamon rolls. On a humid summer evening, the shop was half full, its windows fogged from the lingering rain outside. Nia Coleman sat at her usual corner table, her scrubs swapped for a loose linen blouse and jeans, her natural curls pulled into a high puff that bounced when she laughed. Across from her, Ethan Caldwell leaned forward, his hoodie slightly damp from their walk, his blue eyes catching the glow of the fairy lights strung above. They were deep in a debate about whether Chicago deep dish could ever beat Detroit's square-cut pizza, their laughter drawing smiles from the barista. Nia sipped her chai latte, the spice warming her throat, and pointed a finger at Ethan. "You're out here disrespecting my city," she teased, her voice playful. "Detroit pizza's got history, soul, that crispy edge you can't fake. Chicago's just a casserole with dreams." Ethan grinned, leaning back in his chair, his hands raised in mock surrender. All right, I'm not trying to start a war. But you gotta admit, a slice of Lou Malnati's hits different after a long day. You ever tried it with extra sausage?" She rolled her eyes, but her smile betrayed her. "Keep talking, and I'm gonna make you try my mama's cornbread instead. Then you'll know what real food tastes like." "Deal," he said, his voice softening, his gaze lingering on her. "But only if you make it yourself." The way he looked at her, steady, warm, like she was the only person in the room, sent a flutter through Nia's chest. It had been 2 weeks since their rainy meeting at the Brew, that impulsive kiss under the streetlights that had left her dizzy. Since then, they'd fallen into an easy rhythm. Coffee dates after her hospital shifts, late-night texts about everything from music to their favorite Chicago haunts, walks through the city that stretched into hours. Ethan was different from the guys she'd dated before. No flashy charm, no agenda, just a quiet confidence that made her feel seen. He listened when she talked about her patients, asked about her dream to open a clinic in underserved neighborhoods, and never pushed when she teased him about his vague answers regarding his job. "So, what's the deal with you, Mr. Tech Guy?" she asked, stirring her latte. "You're always dodging when I ask about work. Another secret project keeping you up at night?" Ethan's smile tightened just for a second before he shrugged. "Nothing exciting. I work for a software company, building platforms to help people connect. Long hours, lots of code. You'd probably fall asleep if I got into it." She raised an eyebrow, sensing the dodge but letting it slide. "Fine. Keep your mysteries. But if you're secretly designing the next TikTok, I'm claiming credit for inspiring you." He laughed, the sound low and genuine, and reached across the table, his fingers brushing hers. The contact was brief, but it sent a spark through her, warm and electric. "You're inspiring plenty already, Nia," he said, his voice low. "Trust me." Her breath caught, and for a moment the noisy coffee shop faded away. She pulled her hand back, tucking a curl behind her ear, and changed the subject, afraid of how easily he unraveled her. But the spark lingered, a promise of something deeper, something she wasn't sure she was ready for. Those early weeks were a whirlwind of stolen moments. Nia's life was a juggling act, grueling shifts at Mercy Hospital, studying for her board certification, and helping out at community health fairs in Hyde Park where she'd grown up. But Ethan carved out a space in her chaos, showing up with takeout from Harold's Chicken Shack after her 16-hour shifts, or texting her Solange lyrics when she was stressed. They explored Chicago together, from the Art Institute's quiet galleries to the bustling stalls of Maxwell Street Market, where they shared tamales and laughed over Ethan's attempt to haggle. He dressed down, hoodies, jeans, baseball caps, and blended into her world, never drawing attention, never acting like he was more than a guy who liked her company. One night, after a particularly brutal shift where Nia had lost a patient, she texted Ethan, her fingers trembling. "You free? Need to get out of my head." He was at her apartment in Hyde Park within the hour, a paper bag of soup and cornbread from a soul food spot in his hand. Her place was small but alive, bookshelves stuffed with medical texts and novels, a Kehinde Wiley print on the wall, plants spilling over every windowsill. She let him in, her scrubs wrinkled, her eyes red from holding back tears. "You didn't have to come," she said, taking the bag, her voice thick. "I wanted to," he said simply, kicking off his shoes and following her to the tiny kitchen table. "Rough day?" She nodded, stirring the soup, the steam rising between them. "Lost someone. A kid. It's never easy." He reached for her hand, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. "I'm here, Nia. Whatever you need." She looked at him, his face soft in the dim light, and felt a pull she couldn't ignore. She slid onto his lap, her arms wrapping around his neck, and kissed him, slow at first, then deeper, hungrier. His hands found her waist, pulling her closer, and the world shrank to the heat of his mouth, the steady rhythm of his heartbeat against hers. The kiss was a lifeline, a moment of connection that drowned out the pain of her day. But as it deepened, Nia pulled back, her forehead resting against his, her breath shaky. "Slow down, tech guy," she said, a small smile breaking through. "You're making my head spin." He laughed softly, his hands still on her hips. "You're the one making me dizzy, Nia Coleman." They stayed like that, tangled together on her kitchen chair, talking until the early hours about her patients, his love for obscure novels, their dreams for a better world. Nia felt herself falling, not just for Ethan's charm, but for the way he made her feel, safe, valued, whole. She didn't know he was Ethan Caldwell, The billionaire whose app powered half the phones in Chicago, whose penthouse in the Loop was worth more than her entire neighborhood. She only knew he was hers, at least for now. But love, even the kind that felt like magic, came with shadows. Nia's best friend, Jada, was the first to raise a flag. Jada, a nurse at Mercy with a no-nonsense streak and braids that changed color every month, had met Ethan a few times. Coffee runs, a quick dinner at a taco spot. She liked him, but her journalist's instincts, honed from years of sniffing out hospital gossip, wouldn't let her relax. "He's sweet, Nia. I'll give him that," Jada said one Saturday, as they set up a health screening booth at a Hyde Park community fair. The air smelled of grilled corn and sunscreen, and kids ran past with face paint smudged on their cheeks. "But he's cagey. Never talks about his job, his friends, his life. You ever been to his place? Met anyone he knows?" Nia adjusted a stack of flyers, her stomach twisting. "He's private, Jada. Not everyone's an open book like you." Jada raised an eyebrow, her neon green braids catching the sun. "Private's one thing. Secretive's another. You're out here telling him about your mama's cornbread recipe, your med school debt, your whole heart. What's he giving you back?" Nia brushed it off, but Jada's words stuck like a pebble in her shoe. Ethan was vague about his work, his past, even where he lived. He'd said he shared an apartment with a roommate, but she'd never seen it. Their dates always at her place or neutral spots like the Brew. She told herself it didn't matter. That he showed up when she needed him. That his actions spoke louder than his silences. But doubt was a quiet thing, and it grew with every unanswered question. The turning point came a month into their relationship, when Nia was grabbing lunch in the hospital cafeteria. Malik Turner, a fellow doctor with an easy smile and a reputation for being Mercy's resident heartthrob, slid into the seat across from her. Malik was kind, driven, and had been dropping hints about his interest for months. Today, he wasn't subtle. "Nia, you free this weekend?" he asked, his eyes warm. "There's a jazz night at the Green Mill. Thought you might want to go. You know, get out of this hospital bubble for a bit." Nia hesitated, her fork pausing over her salad. Malik was everything she should want. Steady, open, someone who shared her world of medicine and community. But as she looked at him, all she could think of was Ethan. His laugh, his touch, the way he made her feel like she could conquer anything. She'd fallen for him, hard and fast, and the idea of choosing someone else, even for one night, felt like a betrayal. "Thanks, Malik," she said, her voice gentle but firm. "But I'm seeing someone. It's complicated, but I'm all in." Malik nodded, his smile tinged with disappointment. "Lucky guy. Let me know if he messes up, all right?" She laughed, but as he walked away, Jada's warnings echoed in her mind. Complicated was an understatement. Ethan was a mystery, a man who felt like home, but kept parts of himself locked away. She trusted him, or at least she wanted to. But as she texted him later that night, inviting him to a soul food spot in Hyde Park, she couldn't shake the feeling that their love, as bright as it was built on a foundation she didn't fully understand. Nia Coleman's apartment in Chicago's Hyde Park was a sanctuary, a small but vibrant space that held her heart. The walls were adorned with a vibrant Kehinde Wiley print and family photos from her childhood in Detroit. Summers at the block party, her mama's macaroni and cheese steaming on the table. Bookshelves sagged under the weight of medical texts and Toni Morrison novels, and green plants spilled over every windowsill, catching the soft glow of the city outside. Tonight, the air smelled of garlic and thyme from the gumbo Nia had spent hours simmering, a recipe she'd learned from her grandma. She wore a loose silk dress, its emerald hue shimmering against her brown skin, her curls loose and framing her face. The table was set for two, candles flickering to the soulful hum of Aretha Franklin's Respect playing through her Bluetooth speaker. It was their 3-month anniversary, not of their first kiss, but of the day they'd met under that rainy awning at the brew, and Nia wanted it to be perfect. Ethan Caldwell was due any minute, and Nia's heart fluttered at the thought. The past 2 months had been a dream, a blur of late-night talks, stolen kisses, and a connection that felt like it could carry her through anything. Ethan was her safe place, the man who showed up with soup after her toughest shifts, who listened to her dreams of opening a clinic and made her believe they were possible. Sure, he was cagey about his life, never inviting her to his place, dodging questions about his job, but she'd told herself it didn't matter. He showed her he cared in 1,000 small ways, and that was enough. Tonight she wanted to show him she was all in, that this thing between them was real. She adjusted the candles, her fingers lingering on the tablecloth, when her phone buzzed with a text from Jada, her best friend. "Check the Chicago Biz Times, now. I'm sorry, Nia." Her stomach dropped. Jada wasn't one for dramatics, so Nia grabbed her phone, her hands shaky as she opened the link. The headline hit like a punch. Nova Tech's Ethan Caldwell, Chicago's billionaire visionary, expands healthcare push. Below it was a photo of Ethan, sharp in a tailored suit, standing at a podium, his blue eyes unmistakable. The article gushed about his $10 billion empire, his communication app that powered half the world's phones, his recent pivot to healthcare initiatives for underserved communities. A quote from his PR director, Vanessa Tate, caught her eye. "Ethan's personal commitment to community health is driving this bold new direction." Nia's breath caught, her mind racing. Vanessa Tate, her old friend from med school, the one who'd traded scrubs for a corporate career, who'd always seemed to resent Nia's quiet confidence. And Ethan, her Ethan, was Ethan Caldwell, the billionaire she'd seen on magazine covers, the man whose name was synonymous with wealth and power, the man she'd kissed in alleys, laughed with over soul food, loved with every piece of her heart. He'd lied to her for 3 months, letting her believe he was just a tech guy with a knack for quoting Zora Neale Hurston. The door buzzed, and Nia flinched, her phone slipping to the table. She opened it, and there he was. Ethan, in his usual hoodie and jeans, a bouquet of sunflowers in his hand, his smile faltering when he saw her face. "Nia," he said, stepping inside. "What's wrong?" She held up her phone, the article still glowing on the screen. "Who are you, Ethan? Or should I say Ethan Caldwell, billionaire CEO, America's most eligible bachelor?" His face paled, the flowers drooping in his hand. "Nia, I can explain." "Explain what?" she cut in, her voice rising, sharp with pain. "That you've been lying to me for 3 months. That you let me tell you everything, my family, my struggles, my dreams, while you fed me half-truths about working in tech. You think I'm some kind of game, Ethan?" "No," he said quickly, stepping toward her, his hands outstretched. "It's not like that. I wanted to tell you, I swear, but every time I tried, I was afraid you'd look at me differently, like everyone else does. With you, I was just me, the real me, the real you." She laughed, a bitter sound that echoed in the small apartment. "I don't even know who that is. Was any of it real? The nights we spent here, the things you said? Or was I just a break from your penthouse life?" He flinched, his eyes pleading. "Everything was real, Nia. Every word, every moment. I love you. I've never felt this way about anyone. I was scared if you knew who I was, you'd see the money, the headlines, not me." Her throat tightened, tears burning her eyes. She wanted to believe him, to cling to the man who'd held her through her darkest days, but the betrayal cut too deep. And then there was Vanessa, her friend, her confidant from med school, who'd known about Ethan's lie and used it to tie Nia's name to Novatech's healthcare push, making her look like a pawn in his empire. The article had quoted colleagues at Mercy, questioning whether Nia's clinic dream was authentic or a publicity stunt. Her reputation, her life's work, was now tangled in Ethan's world, and she hadn't even seen it coming. "You didn't just lie to me," she said, her voice trembling. You let Vanessa of all people, drag me into your mess. Do you know what this does to me? My colleagues think I'm sleeping with you for funding. My patients are seeing my name in headlines. You didn't just break my heart, Ethan. You broke my trust, my work, everything I've built. Nia, I didn't know Vanessa would... He started, but she held up a hand, cutting him off. Don't, she said, her voice cold. You don't get to make excuses. You chose to lie. You chose to let me fall for someone who doesn't exist. And Vanessa? She was my friend, Ethan. We studied together, cried together, and she stabbed me in the back because of you. He stepped closer, his voice desperate. I'll fix this. I'll talk to Vanessa, the press, anyone. I'll make it right, Nia, I swear. She backed away, her arms crossed, tears spilling down her cheeks. You can't fix this. Not with words, not with your money. I gave you everything, and you gave me lies. Get out. Nia, please, he said, his voice breaking, his hands reaching for her. Get out, she repeated, her voice a blade. He stood there, his shoulders slumping, then nodded once, setting the sunflowers on the table. The door closed behind him with a soft click, and Nia sank to the floor, her sobs muffled by Aretha's voice still playing in the background. The gumbo grew cold, the candles burned out, and the life she'd imagined with Ethan shattered like glass around her. The next morning, Nia woke to a flood of notifications, texts from Jada, emails from colleagues, and a barrage of social media posts. The Chicago Biz-Times article had gone viral, with blogs and X accounts speculating about her relationship with Ethan. Some called her a gold digger, others questioned her integrity as a doctor. Vanessa's fingerprints were all over it. She'd fed the press just enough to twist the narrative, making Nia look like a prop in Novatech's PR machine. The betrayal stung worse than Ethan's lies. Vanessa had been her rock in med school, the one who'd shared late-night study sessions and dreams of changing the world. Now she'd used Nia's trust to boost her own career, all while protecting Ethan's secret. Nia called Jada, her voice hoarse from crying. I need to get out of here, she said. Can I crash with you for a bit? Girl, you don't even have to ask, Jada said, her voice fierce. Pack a bag, I'm coming to get you. By noon, Nia was at Jada's apartment in Bronzeville, a cozy space filled with colorful throw pillows and the smell of lavender incense. Jada handed her a plate of fried catfish and collard greens, her neon green braids swaying as she sat across from her. Eat, she said. Then we're gonna figure this out. You're Nia Coleman, the baddest doctor I know. You don't let some billionaire and his shady PR chick take you down. Nia managed a weak smile, picking at the food. I trusted him, Jada. I told him everything. My fears, my dreams, my whole heart. And Vanessa, she was supposed to be my friend. Jada reached across the table, squeezing her hand. I know, babe. They both did you dirty, but you're stronger than this. You've been through med school, racist professors, 36-hour shifts. You're gonna get through this too. Nia nodded, but inside, she wasn't so sure. She'd loved Ethan with a fierceness that scared her, a love that had felt like home. Now that home was gone, and she was left with questions she couldn't answer. Who was she without him? Had she been naive to believe in a love so bright, so fast? And how could she rebuild when her name, her work, her identity were tangled in his lies? She stood, walking to Jada's window, the Chicago skyline stretching before her. The city had always been her anchor, its rhythm in her blood. But now, it felt like a maze, full of shadows she didn't know how to navigate. She thought of her mama's words, spoken over Sunday dinners in Hyde Park. You're enough, Nia. Always have been, always will be. She clung to those words, a lifeline in the dark, and vowed to find her way back to herself, no matter how long it took. Nia Coleman's temporary home was Jada's cozy apartment in Chicago's Bronzeville, a space that felt like a warm embrace after the chaos of the past week. The living room was a burst of color. Orange throw pillows, a turquoise rug, and a shelf crammed with vinyl records from Nina Simone to Solange. The air smelled of lavender incense and the fried catfish Jada had whipped up for dinner, a comfort Nia desperately needed. She sat cross-legged on the couch, her laptop open to a spreadsheet for the Detroit Health Fair she was organizing, her curls pulled into a messy bun. Her phone buzzed constantly. Texts from colleagues, emails from reporters, notifications from ex-posts still dissecting her connection to Ethan Caldwell. She ignored them, her focus on the one thing she could control, her dream to open a free clinic in Detroit's Brightmoor neighborhood. It had been 10 days since she'd kicked Ethan out of her apartment, since the Chicago Biz-Times article had turned her life into a public spectacle. The headlines had been brutal, painting her as either a gold digger or a pawn in Novatech's healthcare push, with Vanessa Tate's carefully crafted quotes fueling the fire. Nia's colleagues at Mercy Hospital whispered behind her back, some questioning her integrity, others asking if she'd landed Ethan for funding. Her patients, the ones she'd spent years building trust with, now saw her name linked to a billionaire's agenda. The betrayal, Ethan's lies, Vanessa's betrayal, had gutted her, leaving her questioning everything, even herself. But Nia was a fighter, forged in the crucible of med school and Chicago's relentless streets. She wasn't about to let her dream, or her name, be taken from her. She typed furiously, finalizing the health fair's budget, when Jada plopped onto the couch beside her, a plate of catfish and collard greens in hand. "Girl, you've been at that laptop all day," Jada said, her neon green braids catching the lamplight. "Eat something before you burn out." Nia managed a small smile, taking the plate. "I'm fine, Jada. Just trying to keep this fair on track. If I can pull it off, it'll show everyone I'm about the work, not the drama." Jada raised an eyebrow, her nurse's instincts sharp. "You're not fine. You're hurting, and you're out here acting like you can fix it all with a spreadsheet. Talk to me, Nia. What's going on in that head of yours?" Nia set the plate down, her throat tightening. "I keep seeing his face, Jada. Ethan, standing in my apartment swearing he loved me, and Vanessa smiling like she didn't just stab me in the back. I trusted them, and now my name's a headline, my work's a question mark. What if I'm not strong enough to get through this?" Jada leaned forward, her voice fierce. "Listen to me, Nia Coleman. You're the woman who got through med school while working 2 jobs, who saved lives in the ER when everyone else was panicking. You're stronger than Ethan's lies, stronger than Vanessa's petty games. You built your dream from nothing, and you're going to keep building it. You hear me?" Nia's eyes stung, but she nodded, Jada's words kindling a spark of resolve. She spent the next few days throwing herself into the health fair, coordinating with Detroit community leaders, securing sponsors, and planning free screenings for diabetes and hypertension. It was a chance to prove her clinic wasn't a publicity stunt, to show the world and herself who she really was. But the challenges kept coming. Mercy Hospital announced budget cuts, threatening the funding for her pilot program, and a local blog, likely fed by Vanessa, published a post questioning whether Nia's billionaire connections were behind her clinic plans. The accusations stung, but Nia refused to break. The Detroit Health Fair was a beacon of hope in Brightmoor, a neighborhood worn but resilient. The lot was transformed with colorful tents, tables laden with peach cobbler and fried chicken, and a gospel choir singing "Lean on Me" under a clear summer sky. Nia moved through the crowd, her white blouse and jeans practical but sharp, her curls bouncing as she checked blood pressures and handed out flyers. The community embraced her, elders sharing stories of her parents, kids tugging at her sleeve for stickers. It felt like home, like the Detroit block parties of her childhood, and for the first time in weeks, Nia felt grounded. But the whispers followed her. A group of hospital board members from Mercy, invited to see her work, exchanged skeptical glances, their murmurs about Caldwell's influence cutting through the music. Nia overheard them, her jaw tightening. and decided it was time to take control. She climbed onto the stage, the mic heavy in her hand, and faced the crowd, hundreds of neighbors, volunteers, and the board members who doubted her. "Thank you all for being here," she said, her voice steady, carrying over the chatter. "This fair, this dream of a free clinic, isn't about headlines or money. It's about us, our community, our health, our future. I've spent my life fighting for this, not because of who I know, but because of where I come from. My parents taught me that we lift each other up no matter what. So let's keep that promise. Together." The crowd erupted in applause, elders nodding, kids cheering, and even the board members softened, some clapping reluctantly. Nia stepped off the stage, her heart pounding, and Jada pulled her into a hug. "That's my girl," Jada said, grinning. "You just shut them all up." Nia laughed, the weight on her chest lifting. She'd reclaimed her narrative, shown the world she was more than a billionaire's footnote. But as she moved through the fair, handing out water bottles, a familiar face caught her eye. Malik Turner, the doctor from Mercy who'd asked her out weeks ago. He was volunteering at a screening booth, his easy smile lighting up the crowd. When he saw her, he waved her over, his eyes warm. "You're killing it out here, Nia," he said, handing her a bottle of water. "This fair? It's incredible. You're incredible." She smiled, brushing a curl from her face. "Thanks, Malik. Just trying to do right by my people." He stepped closer, his voice lowering. "You know, I meant what I said back at the hospital. If things with that guy don't work out, I'd love to take you to that jazz night. No pressure, just you and me." Nia's breath caught. Malik was everything she should want. Kind, grounded, a man who shared her world of medicine and service. His attention was a quiet thrill, stirring a part of her that had been bruised since Ethan's betrayal. For a moment she imagined it. A life without secrets, without the chaos of billionaires and headlines. But as she looked at Malik, her mind flashed to Ethan. His laugh, his touch, the way he'd made her feel like she could conquer the world. Despite the lies, her heart still ached for him, a truth she wasn't ready to face. "I appreciate that, Malik," she said, her voice gentle. "But I'm not ready. I've got a lot to figure out, you know." He nodded, his smile tinged with understanding. "Fair enough. I'm here if you change your mind." As he walked away, Nia felt a pang of regret, but also clarity. She wasn't ready to move on, not yet. She needed to heal, to rebuild, to find herself again before she could love anyone, Ethan or otherwise. That night, back at Jada's apartment, Nia sat on the couch, scrolling through photos from the fair. The community's support had been overwhelming, and a local news outlet had published a glowing piece about her work, countering the Biz Times narrative. She was starting to feel like herself again when Jada burst in, a manila envelope in her hand. "This came for you at the hospital," Jada said, tossing it onto the couch. "No return address, but it's got your name on it." Nia's stomach twisted as she opened the envelope. Inside was a deed. A building in Brightmoor, zoned for medical use, titled in her name. A handwritten note was tucked beside it, the handwriting unmistakably Ethan's. "Nia, this is for your clinic. No strings, no Novatech, just a start. I believe in you. Ethan." She stared at the note, her heart racing. Jada peered over her shoulder, whistling low. "Well, damn. Your billionaire's not playing around." "He's not my billionaire," Nia said, but her voice lacked conviction. The deed was a gesture, a risk, a plea. She thought of Ethan's face in her apartment, the desperation in his eyes when she told him to leave. He'd hurt her, lied to her, but this was him trying to make it right, not with words, but with action. She walked to the window, the Chicago skyline glittering below. Her mama's voice echoed in her mind. "You're enough, Nia. always have been, always will be. She'd fought for her dream, her name, her community, and she'd won. But what about Ethan? Was there a piece of the man she'd loved still worth saving, or was this just another billionaire's attempt to buy his way back? As she tucked the deed into her bag, Nia felt a shift inside her. She wasn't ready to forgive Ethan, not yet. But she couldn't ignore the pull to hear him out, not as the woman who'd loved him, but as the woman who knew her own worth. The question was, could she face him without losing herself again? The Detroit Health Fair in Brightmoor was a tapestry of community spirit, its energy as vibrant as the summer sun overhead. Tents dotted the grassy lot, their tables overflowing with fried chicken, peach cobbler, and pitchers of sweet tea that sparkled in the light. A gospel choir belted out "Wade in the Water" from a small stage, their voices weaving through the chatter of families, volunteers, and local leaders. The air was thick with the smoky scent of barbecue and the promise of hope, a reminder of why Nia Coleman had fought so hard for this moment. She stood at a podium, her navy blue dress hugging her curves, her natural curls a crown of confidence as she spoke about her vision for a free clinic in the neighborhood. Her words were steady, her presence commanding, and the crowd, 100 strong, hung on every syllable, their applause thundering when she finished. Nia stepped back, her heart pounding with pride, but shadowed by the weight of the past month. She'd clawed her way back from the wreckage of Ethan Caldwell's lies and Vanessa Tate's betrayal, rebuilding her reputation through sheer grit and the success of this fair. But as the choir's song faded and the MC prepared to introduce the next speaker, a figure moved through the crowd, drawing whispers and curious glances. Nia's breath caught when she saw him. Ethan, his white shirt rolled up at the sleeves, his dark hair slightly messy, his blue eyes locked on her with an intensity that made her pulse race. He was here, in Detroit, at her health fair, after weeks of silence since she'd found his anonymous deed in her mail. She'd agreed to meet him at the Brew in Chicago, but his presence now, unannounced, felt like a storm she wasn't ready for. Ethan strode toward the stage, his steps deliberate, ignoring the MC's attempt to intercept. He climbed the steps, took the mic, and faced the crowd, the spotlight casting shadows across his face. The audience fell silent, some recognizing him from the headlines. The billionaire CEO of Novatech, Chicago's golden boy. Nia's hands clenched at her sides, her mind screaming to stop him, to protect the fragile peace she'd built. But her feet stayed rooted, her heart a tangle of anger and hope. "Nia Coleman," Ethan said, his voice rough but clear, carrying over the quiet. "I owe you an apology, not just to you, but to everyone here who believes in your dream." The crowd murmured, phones rising to record. Nia's throat tightened, memories flooding back. The heat of Ethan's kisses under Chicago streetlights, the safety of his arms after her hospital shifts, the knife of his betrayal when she'd learned he was a billionaire. She wanted to drag him off stage, to demand answers in private, but his eyes held hers, raw and unguarded, and she couldn't look away. "I met Nia 4 months ago," Ethan continued, his gaze never wavering. "I was hiding who I am, Ethan Caldwell, the guy behind Novatech, because I was afraid that if she knew about the money, the headlines, she wouldn't see me. But I was wrong. I lied to her, broke her trust, and hurt the strongest, most brilliant woman I've ever known. I don't deserve her forgiveness, but I'm here to say her dream, this clinic, this community, is real. It's bigger than my mistakes, and I believe in her with everything I've got." The crowd erupted in applause, some cheering, others wiping tears. Nia stood frozen, her mind a storm of emotions, anger at his audacity, pain from his lies, and a flicker of something softer, something that remembered the man who'd loved her fiercely. Ethan stepped down, handing the mic back, and approached her, stopping a few feet away. Up close, she could see the exhaustion in his eyes, the faint stubble on his jaw, the way his hands trembled as he pulled a small envelope from his pocket. "This is the deed I sent," he said, his voice low, meant only for her. "A building for your clinic, in your name, no strings. I'm not asking you to take me back, Nia. I'm asking you to let me support your dream as a partner, not a savior." Her fingers brushed his as she took the envelope, the contact sending a jolt through her. She remembered the nights they'd spent tangled together, his breath warm against her neck, the way his touch had made her feel alive. Her body still knew him, still craved him, but her heart was guarded now, armored by the pain he'd caused. She tucked the envelope into her purse, her voice steady despite the chaos inside. "Words don't erase what you did, Ethan," she said, her eyes locked on his. "You hurt me, humiliated me, and you don't get to fix that with a speech and a deed. I'll consider your offer, but don't think this means we're okay." He nodded, relief and regret mixing in his expression. "I'll take whatever you give me. Just meet me at the brew, like we planned. One talk, Nia. That's all I'm asking." She hesitated, then nodded once, her jaw tight. "One talk. Don't make me regret it." As Ethan stepped back, blending into the crowd to help with a booth, Nia's phone buzzed with a text from Jada. "Check X. Vanessa's at it again." Her stomach dropped. She opened the app, her eyes scanning a thread from an anonymous account. "Nia Coleman's clinic is just a Novatech PR stunt. She's back with Caldwell, using his money to play hero." The thread included photos from the fair, twisted to suggest Nia and Ethan were scheming together, and comments piled up, some viciously attacking her race and integrity. Nia's hands shook, anger surging. She knew Vanessa's handiwork. This was her revenge, a desperate bid to undermine Nia's success and protect her own narrative as Novatech's star PR director. Nia found Jada at a screening booth, her friend's face tight with fury. "This is bull," Jada said, shoving her phone at Nia. "Vanessa's trying to tank you and I'm not having it. I've got a friend at the Detroit Free Press who can run a counter-story, but we need to move fast." Nia nodded, her mind racing. "I'm not letting her win, Jada. Not this time." She spotted Ethan across the lot, stacking chairs with volunteers, and waved him over. His face lit with hope, but she kept her voice firm. "Vanessa's spreading lies about me in the clinic," she said, showing him the thread. "If you're serious about making things right, help me shut this down. Now." Ethan's jaw tightened, his eyes darkening. "She's been gunning for me since I pulled back her budget at Novatech. I didn't think she'd go after you like this. I'm in, Nia, whatever you need." They retreated to a quiet tent, Jada joining them with her laptop. The air was thick with tension, but also a familiar rhythm, the way Nia and Ethan had once worked together, brainstorming over coffee at the brew. As Jada drafted a statement, Ethan called his assistant Lila, who'd been quietly supportive of his efforts to win Nia back. "Lila, I need you to pull every email Vanessa sent about the healthcare initiative," he said. "Anything that shows she's twisting the truth." Nia watched him, her heart conflicted. His hand brushed hers as they passed a notepad, and she felt a spark, her body betraying her with memories of his touch, the way he'd held her close, his lips tracing her skin. She pulled back, focusing on the task, but the tension lingered, a reminder of the love that hadn't fully died. By evening, their statement was live, a clear professional rebuttal affirming Nia's independence and the clinic's community roots, with Ethan taking responsibility for his past lies and distancing Novatech from the project. Jada's friend at the Free Press published an article highlighting Nia's work, backed by testimonials from Brightmoor residents. The narrative shifted, with ex-users praising Nia's resilience and calling out the anonymous attacks as petty. Vanessa's scheme backfired, her credibility taking a hit. Nia stood outside the fair as the sun set, the gospel choir now singing Amazing Grace. the notes floating over the emptying lot. Ethan approached, his hands in his pockets, his expression cautious. "We did good today," he said. "You did good. This fair, your vision, it's unstoppable." She studied him, searching for the man who'd lied, but seeing instead the one who'd fought beside her today. "You didn't have to help," she said. "Why did you?" "Because I believe in you," he said simply. "And because I owe you more than I can ever repay." Her throat tightened, his words stirring something deep inside her. She thought of her mama's lessons about forgiveness, about loving without losing yourself. "I'll take the deed," she said finally, her voice firm. "But it's on my terms. I control the clinic, every step. And this doesn't mean we're back together, Ethan. It means we're partners, equals. Can you handle that?" "I can," he said, his voice thick with relief. "Thank you, Nia. I won't let you down." As he walked away, joining the volunteers to clean up, Nia felt a weight lift. She'd chosen to step back into Ethan's orbit, but this time she was in control. Not the starry-eyed woman who'd loved him, but a doctor, a daughter of Detroit, a force who knew her worth. The road ahead would be hard, but as the city lights flickered to life, Nia knew she was ready. For the clinic, for herself, and maybe, just maybe, for a love built on truth. The new Brightmoor Community Clinic stood proudly on a quiet street in Detroit, a beacon of hope in a neighborhood that had seen too many empty promises. The building was modest but vibrant, its brick facade painted with a mural of raised fists and blooming flowers, a gift from local artists. Inside, the waiting room was warm with hardwood floors, walls adorned with Kehinde Wiley-inspired prints, and a shelf of children's books in English and Spanish. The air carried the faint scent of antiseptic, mixed with the sweetness of fresh flowers, donated by a nearby church. Tonight, the clinic was alive with celebration, its doors thrown open for a grand opening that had drawn half the neighborhood. Tables were laden with fried chicken, macaroni and cheese, and peach cobbler, and a local R&B band played a soulful cover of Stevie Wonder's "Isn't She Lovely" in the courtyard. Laughter and chatter filled the space, a testament to the community's faith in Nia Coleman's vision. Nia stood near the entrance, her Kente-inspired dress flowing around her, its bold oranges and greens a nod to her heritage. Her natural curls were loose, catching the soft glow of string lights overhead, and a quiet confidence radiated from her. She chatted with Mrs. Jenkins, an elder who'd known her parents, and handed out stickers to kids darting through the crowd. This was her dream made real, a free clinic for Brightmoor, offering care to those who'd been overlooked for too long. It had taken 18 months of relentless work, countless sleepless nights, and a partnership she'd never expected to embrace again. Across the room, Ethan Caldwell was in deep conversation with a group of volunteers, his laugh warm and unguarded, his button-down shirt rolled up at the sleeves. He caught her eye and smiled, a silent acknowledgement of the journey they'd shared. Since the Detroit Health Fair, where Ethan had stunned her with his public apology, Nia and Ethan had rebuilt something new. Not the wild, reckless love of their early days, but a partnership grounded in truth and respect. It hadn't been easy. Nia had set clear boundaries from the start, meeting Ethan in her Chicago office to discuss the clinic's plans, keeping their interactions professional. She'd accepted his investment, a building and seed funding, but insisted on full control, with legal contracts ensuring Novatech had no claim. Ethan had honored every term, proving his commitment not with grand gestures but with steady, quiet support. He'd attended community meetings in Brightmoor, listened to residents' needs, and used his tech expertise to design a patient portal that was free and accessible. They'd worked as equals, their old chemistry tempered by a new maturity, like two people rediscovering each other without the weight of secrets. Nia's own empire had grown alongside the clinic. Her work at Mercy Hospital earned her a promotion to lead the community health program. and her advocacy for equitable care landed her a TED Talk invitation. She'd launched a scholarship for Black medical students, inspired by her parents' legacy as educators, and her name was now a beacon for women of color in medicine. She was no longer the woman who'd defined herself through Ethan's love. She was Nia Coleman, a force, and she wore her worth like armor. But tonight was about the clinic, about Brightmoor, about the community that had lifted her up. As the band shifted to a slower tune, Jill Scott's "He Loves Me," Nia stepped into the courtyard, needing a moment to breathe. The summer air was warm, the Detroit skyline a faint glow in the distance. She leaned against a tree, closing her eyes, letting the music wrap around her like a hug. This was her victory, not just for her, but for every kid who'd grown up in Brightmoor, every elder who'd been turned away from care, every dream that had been deferred. Footsteps crunched on the gravel, and she opened her eyes to find Ethan, his hands in his pockets, a hesitant smile on his face. "Mind if I join you?" he asked. She nodded, gesturing to the space beside her. "It's your party too, or—" He stood close, his arm brushing hers, but kept a respectful distance, mindful of the boundaries she'd set. The faint cedar scent of his cologne stirred memories. Nights in her Hyde Park apartment, his lips on hers, promises whispered under streetlights. Her body remembered him, a quiet ache she'd learned to live with, but she pushed it aside, focusing on the man beside her now. "You were amazing tonight," Ethan said, his voice soft. "The way you welcomed everyone, made them feel like this clinic is theirs. You're a natural, Nia. This place is going to change lives because of you." She smiled, tucking a curl behind her ear. "You didn't do too bad yourself. That speech about community tech had Mrs. Jenkins ready to sign up for your app." He chuckled, then grew serious, his eyes searching hers. "You've changed me, Nia. Not by forgiving me, but by showing me what it means to build something real, to care about people, not just outcomes. I look at you, at this clinic, and I'm in awe." Her throat tightened, his words hitting a place she'd kept guarded. She looked at him, really looked, and saw the man he'd become, humble where he'd once been guarded, deliberate where he'd been reckless. The spark that had drawn her to him was still there, but it was grounded now, shaped by the lessons of his mistakes. "You've changed too," she said, her voice steady. "The old Ethan would have made this about him, his money, his vision. But you stepped back, let Brightmoor lead. That's the man I always knew you could be." Their eyes locked, and for a moment the air between them crackled, heavy with unspoken possibility. His gaze flicked to her lips, lingering just long enough to stir a warmth in her chest. She felt it too, the pull to close the distance, to see if their old fire could burn again. But she stepped back, breaking the spell, and he didn't push. They'd both learned the cost of crossing lines too soon. "Partners, right?" she said, a small smile playing on her lips. "Partners," he echoed, his voice warm with understanding. They stood in silence, the music drifting from the courtyard. Nia thought of the journey that had brought them here, the rain-soaked nights of their beginning, the betrayal that had shattered her, the strength she'd found in rebuilding herself. She'd forgiven Ethan, not because he deserved it, but because she deserved peace. And in that forgiveness, she'd found freedom, a chance to write a new story, one where she was whole, with or without him. The celebration hit its peak when the community gathered for a ribbon-cutting ceremony. Nia and Ethan stood side by side, scissors in hand, as Mrs. Jenkins took the mic. "To Nia Coleman and Ethan Caldwell," she said, her voice ringing with pride, "for believing in Brightmoor, for building this clinic with love and truth, and for showing us what it means to rise together." The crowd cheered, the ribbon falling in a cascade of red, and Nia felt a surge of joy, pure and unshakable. She glanced at Ethan, their eyes meeting in a moment of shared triumph. It wasn't the reckless love of their youth, nor the fractured dream they'd lost. It was something deeper. Two people who'd chosen to walk the same path, not because they needed each other, but because they wanted to. Later, as the party wound down, Nia and Ethan found themselves cleaning up, stacking plates and wiping tables while the band played a final gospel tune. It was a small, ordinary moment, but it felt right, like the nights they'd spent washing dishes in her old apartment. They laughed when Ethan dropped a spoon, their shoulders brushing, and Nia caught a glimpse of the man she'd met in the rain, still there beneath the scars of his mistakes. "You think we pulled it off?" Ethan asked, tossing a napkin into the trash. She grinned, nudging him with her elbow. "We did more than pull it off, Caldwell. We built something real." He smiled, his eyes warm with pride. "Couldn't have done it without you, Coleman. And don't you forget it," she teased, her voice light but firm. As they stepped back into the courtyard, the city lights twinkling above, Nia felt a peace she hadn't known was possible. The clinic was her legacy, her clients, her family, and Detroit, her heart. Ethan was part of that now, not as her everything, but as a partner, a friend, a man she'd chosen to keep in her life. Some asked if they were back together, expecting a fairy tale ending. The truth was messier, richer. They weren't the lovers who'd kissed under streetlights, nor the couple torn apart by lies. They were two whole people, standing side by side, their past a foundation for something new. Occasionally, when Ethan looked at her across a planning table or laughed at her cornbread jokes, Nia felt a flicker of that old spark. But she didn't need it to define her. She was enough, and that was her greatest victory. Her mama's words echoed in her mind. "You're enough, Nia. Always have been. Always will be." She'd learned her worth, not in Ethan's love or the clinic's success, but in the life she'd built, the community she'd lifted. As she stood there, the Detroit skyline glowing, she knew she'd found her true wealth, not in money, but in purpose, respect, and a love that didn't demand her sacrifice. Nia and Ethan's story reminds us that true love is built on truth, not secrets, and that knowing your worth is the foundation of every dream. What did you think of their journey? Hit that subscribe button, drop a comment, and share your own story of love, trust, or rebuilding from the ground up. Let's keep the conversation going and celebrate the strength it takes to rise,